I'll read it again. The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. How should we interpret Revelation? John tells us, he shows us in verse 20, stars signify angels, lampstands symbolize churches. And what John does here in verse 20 of chapter 1, he does it throughout the entire book. He interprets the imagery and he shows us that the images are signs which point beyond to greater spiritual truth and significance. So why did John use symbols to communicate his message? And I think maybe for different reasons, but the most basic is this. Symbols express the inexpressible. They express the inexpressible. Revelation is an unveiling. It begins this way, the revelation from Jesus Christ. The word revelation in the Greek is the word apocalypse. The apocalypse, that word literally means unveiling. Revelation is an unveiling. And what does it unveil? Revelation pulls back the curtain and it unveils ultimate reality. The spiritual world now and the future world that is to come. And words can only take us so far in understanding and describing heavenly and eternal reality. For example, we sense this in chapter 1 as John catches this vision of the cosmic Jesus, and he struggles to put what he sees into words. And when words fall short, we need symbols. We need art, if you will. Revelation is not like reading a textbook or a blog post or a newspaper. Rather, reading Revelation is kind of like a walk through an art gallery. Revelation's images, its symbols are not like photographs. Rather, they are more like impressionistic paintings, which are designed to move us, to stir the emotions, to cause us to reflect. And if Revelation's visual paintings convict us and move us to action now, then we're reading Revelation correctly. And as you walk through Revelation's art gallery, I would encourage you to kind of step back and see the big picture. Don't get lost in all the details. Don't get lost in the weeds, which is really possible. Some of the details are just there for effect. Instead of focusing on the individual brushstrokes, step back and see the full canvas. In other words, focus on what is most obvious, even timeless about the symbol. So let's walk through the art gallery for just a moment. So for example, in Revelation, the church is portrayed as a lampstand. Chapters 1 through 3, and later in chapter 11, the church is a lampstand. And lampstand conveys light and mission. God is represented by the throne in chapter 4, communicating his sovereignty and authority. Jesus is symbolized as a slain lamb in chapter 5, communicating sacrifice or victory through sacrifice. Satan is depicted as a dragon in chapter 12, saying something about the sinister, stealthy nature of evil. Governments and religions that persecute and deceive the church are portrayed as sea and land monsters in chapter 13. Cultures which tempt and seduce God's people are represented as a drunken harlot in chapter 17. God's judgment against evildoers is dramatically portrayed as the lake of fire, Revelation 20. Let me just give you one more example. Christian hope is envisioned as an eternal city and garden, the new heaven and the new earth in Revelation 21 and 22. Now, the Revelation Art Gallery brings all of these paintings together to form a visionary world, a symbolic world. And this is how Revelation works. We enter into the symbolic world, and this experience changes the way we see the everyday world. We enter into the symbolic world, and we see our life differently. The journey through Revelation's symbolic universe affects us, causing us to see our lives and our trials and our struggles from the perspective of heaven and God's future. Let me close with this final thought, this final clue. When reading and studying Revelation, don't miss Jesus. Don't miss Jesus. Revelation 1 sets the tone for the entire book. In Revelation 1, Jesus is the giver of revelation to John, verse 1. He is the faithful witness and the firstborn from the dead and the ruler of the kings of the earth, in verse 5. A subtle allusion to Jesus' death and resurrection and glorification. Jesus is the Lamb who has freed us from our sins by his blood, verse 5. Jesus is the Son of Man who will come in judgment on the clouds, verse 7. He is the glorified Jesus, the glorified Lord who walks among the lampstands, verses 13 and following. And according to verse 18, Jesus is the living one, the one who was dead and now lives forever and ever, the King of kings and the Lord of lords who holds the keys of death and Hades. Revelation 1 sets the tone for the entire book. Revelation is not primarily about Armageddon or 666 or the millennium. Above all, Revelation is about Jesus Christ. If our study of the Bible's final book leads us to worship Jesus with all of our hearts and to follow him wherever he leads, then we have truly simplified Revelation. The words of the classic hymn, I think, convey Revelation's central message for our lives today. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Do you want to live an unshakable life? Revelation invites us to turn our eyes to Jesus.